Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about an internal focus for change in next week's lecture. So a conceptual overview is to allow the collaborative partnership, what you're working with together, the relationship that you're building, to eventually move the client down below the surface. And they begin to focus on their role and the problem that they're coming in and talking about. So one way to do this is to examine habitual response patterns, to ask, are these patterns useful for me today? And try new adaptive ways of interaction. So that's in a nutshell what you might even define as the therapeutic process right there. So well, they're calling this an internal focus for change. And what you'll find hinders this is this sense of self-blame that may come up when bringing the client back to what their role is in their distress. So the ultimate goal of this is to develop introspection. And that means the client's going to be able to have access internally as a felt experience about what they're talking about. And the term is an active agent. So, you know, you help the client develop this, capacity, as psychoanalysts say, the capacity for mentalization, or to make sense of felt experiences and to maintain awareness to felt experiences internally long enough that then they start to understand what these affect states mean to them. So yeah, another way to say it is that we help the client know their own mind, know their own voice, and trust their intuition or gut. A lot of research is being done on the gut brain, which you may want to also look into, which is where we can bond with others, or we can sense safety around bonding, which is based on information that is not cognitive, it's precognitive. And there is biology in our guts that give us this information. So when they can self-examine with you, they can self-examine with other people. And they do this with you. This is really important. So you want to think about early parenting, early bonding, where the parental figure is giving back to the young child, the infant, their experiences in a way that they can make sense of them. And for some clients, this is a shift to even allow someone to participate with them, to be there with them in that supportive role. So when you want to move someone from talking about external events to their own role in an issue, you first want to validate what the client's focus is focusing on, which is distressing. And, you know, even if this doesn't seem accurate, you can phrase it as their subjective experience. You know, because going back to this idea of being genuine also applies in all of these moments, and you will feel it. It's not like you are agreeing, but you're focusing on their feelings about what they're saying. It's required for them to feel cared for. And this also is a way of, is described as meeting the client where they are at. And it's required in order for, again, for them to make that shift to self-examine. So looking at really important aspects of this would be, of course, to take in issues of social justice, where there are very real issues that and factors that influence all of us, but particularly oppressed groups. And this also will apply to family dynamics. All of this will need to be validated first. And so again, validation and empathy need to precede exploration. It's always kind of a good way to think about it. And really what we're trying to get is this change that happens from within the client, which the client will be receptive to after their experiences are being validated. So you can do this strategically by when you are ready to bring back the focus to the client, you can focus on, ask questions about their own thoughts, their own feelings, and their own behaviors. And there's good examples of this on page 114 in the text. Now, by including the external factor, these are validated as you focus clients on themselves. So it's a combined intervention. Self-focus leads to awareness of emotions and feelings, which ultimately give client meaning about these external events. So again, just pair an empathic response with a focus on behaviors. And there are really good examples in the text. I like this term, the eliciting pull. Clients will want you to stay on the surface with them. And again, you don't want to invalidate what they're saying, that you want to be able to move beyond it. So again, this allows the client to make changes in their interaction with you and in their interaction with others. And this is very true that even just noticing that a feeling will give them clarity about a pattern of behavior, which focuses on what they're doing, allows for feelings of hope and efficacy to occur. So there are going to be ways in which you as the therapist will also have reluctance to adopting this internal focus. And these are important for you to understand in terms of your own history. They may go against values, cultural values, or values in your family of origin. And to focus inward means to bring attention or to draw out these core concerns. And you might feel like this is not a way of providing reassurance for the client, but you might feel like this would be upsetting to the client or distressing to the client. So what actually helps the client when therapist reflects on core concerns is this experience of being gotten, which I think a lot of you are talking about in your session papers, your reflection papers and your sessions, your response papers. And again, this idea that a client is able to know their own mind is very important. It doesn't mean that you force an issue on a client or you force them into a difficult feeling, even if you sense it. But you want to stay where the client's at and help the client move into a feeling experience that they've already chosen in a way. They're already showing you they're ready to move into that. You don't have to guess. That's why you want to work with the active listening part where you explore more of what the client is already saying. So many people are talking about this last point here where you just want to go in and fix and you just want to solve. And oh yeah, I have that experience as well. But it really does take away from the client's internal experience of, kind of figuring this out and putting two and two together through their own felt experience. One thing that these are the things that you might be saying, maybe this fear of being invasive. Again, we're moving into a different way of relating. And also you just don't want the client to feel bad. They feel bad enough. So the tendency would be to give them a kind of soothing. And this idea to reassure the client, all of that before the experience of moving the client into more internal awareness of their experience. And sometimes we want just approval. We want to be a good therapist. We want to be liked. We want to know we're doing a good job. And if the client doesn't feel distressed, then we feel reassured that we're doing a good job as therapists. Okay, so again, we're going back to this idea of self-efficacy. And, again, this comes up in the session responses, these impulses to give advice, to explain for the client, to reassure the client everything's okay, and even to disclose the therapist's experience. So it's almost like this chapter was written from out of a lot of yours session responses. And so this is very normal. You want to remember that all those impulses come from a good place and they've been reinforced in your own behaviors in terms of social interaction. But this is a shift that you're making in the role of the therapist. And so it's very common to have these challenges. So hopefully reading these will just encourage you to be more aware of them as they show up. So I like this idea of points of entry, and you want to listen for it. So you want to notice really on a feeling level. You can think about it on a cognitive level, what they're saying, but you're going to feel when there's painful feelings arising. You can also hear it in what they're saying. But you're also going to feel it. These distressing experiences, things that have been disappointing, things that have let down the client. And also topics which connect to early experiences of trauma. So you're always wanting to, once you know a client's developmental history, you kind of always want to have an ear for that. Like, how is this relating to this really significant either traumatic experience or, we've talked about this kind of chronic unmet, the client not being seen in a chronic continuous way. And then you want to also listen for these effective patterns of relating, where someone will become irritable when they're given a chance to focus on themselves, or someone will become shameful, or someone will be distracted and change the subject. And these are the patterns that you want to notice. Oh, here this is again. That can be very helpful. And then anything that just seems like a conflict. that's expressed as a conflict or that's expressed as ambivalence. I really want to be able to ask for my needs more, but I never bring it up when I have the opportunity. So, oh, here we are again. Tell me more about that. That's a way in, these points of entry. So again, we're addressing cultural factors, and this includes focus on self as seeming self-centered. So that may come up as a cultural value that needs to be validated. So you want to acknowledge this as you make the shift into the client's experience. And again, it's really important to remember that this is emotional, a kind of an emotional intelligence that we're helping clients develop. And so that's why we want to pay attention to the affect level of what they're saying and bring it back to them. And then we're going to have a whole chapter on process comments itself. But just a reminder that this again allows them to understand the meaning behind what these affective patterns contain, and that's again, that's something that they've just not had support to do in their lives. So here again, we are looking at the tolerating ambiguity, and I like this term subtle control. I'm just really being there for the client. I know that they're in pain right now, and now again, there's acute pain, of course, which you just respond to in a very simple, basic human way, but that's to be distinguished from this way of where you would collude with the client or not tolerate something that doesn't have an easy fix or an easy solution. So again, this idea of decentering from control. So when you think you have the response that's going to make your client feel so much better, pause, notice it, give it, keep it company, as Gendlin likes to say, in your own inner way, but then move into the client's subjective worldview. And again, highlight their experience. So even as you're having practice sessions, it's okay to take your time as the therapist. It's fine. You can do that. You can do that in your own learning process. And then process comments, again, when you notice them, it's very helpful to reflect on them. And again, we're going to have a whole chapter just on process comments. So there's questions on page 133, which gives you examples of how you can place emphasis of change for the client or within the client. So you may just know exactly what's going on, right? You've seen it, you've heard this, you've related to it, you've had it in your life, you've experienced it, all of that, but you want to enlist their understanding. So it's not about them figuring it out by themselves. It is the relational collaboration that allows them to go inside. Just like primary bonding, this is how we're built. When someone else provides us with that relationship, that container that we resonate with, and that says, yes, I can go into my felt experience. Okay, and then the chapter ends with tracking clients' anxiety. And they kind of break it down into 4 steps, which I think is very helpful. And client's anxiety will be its own reason why it's difficult to go more internal. So the first part is that you want to identify with clients their anxiety. Just noticing, like, what are you noticing? What feels threatening? And just bringing attention to how the anxiety shows up. I noticed that when we start talking about your relationship with your supervisor at work, you look, this is where you start to, your gaze looks down, you get quiet, and your voice starts to soften. So I might not say all of that, but that's what I'm noticing, that it's the conversation with the supervisor at work that is the beginning of the anxiety. So then you can start to explore the identity more once you've identified it. Well, what would happen if you asked a direct question to your supervisor about needing more response from him or her or them about your work? What do you think would happen? Let's explore this together. It's okay to, we can be with your anxiety. So let's explore it. And also, again, what precipitates it. So if you know that what triggers the anxiety, and you can go back to it, and you can go more into the belief. So when you focus on your needs and what you deserve, this is when the anxiety comes up. Or another example would be that if you don't know an answer to something, it's hard for you to share, with your partner about your needs. That's when the anxiety comes up for you. And by doing all of this, I like this phrase, we move from a vague discomfort to a more specific awareness. And that's a really nice way to think about working with anxiety, is that you track it, you identify it, you explore it, and then what feels overwhelming or vague or global becomes much more manageable for the client. So I hope this lecture is helpful, and this is I hope addresses a lot of what some of you or a lot of you are talking about in your response papers. So I look forward to seeing everybody for our class on Wednesday night.